Here's some more history for you. In 1910, after centuries of exploration, just one place on Earth remained unseen by European eyes. That year, British Captain Robert Scott set out to change that, embarking on an expedition to Antarctica with the goal of being the first person to reach the South Pole. He wasn't. Norway's Roald Amundsen beat him there by 5 weeks, and the Scott party perished trying to make it home. Now, two modern-day explorers, Saunders and Tarka L'Herpiniere, are attempting to do what Scott couldn't by retracing Scott's 18,000-mile journey on foot and making it back alive. More on that in just a minute, but first, a quick look at Scott's original 1910 expedition as narrated by Saunders.
Scott led 2 expeditions to Antarctica, the second of which was the ill-fated Terra Nova expedition. Scott and his team left England in June 1910. The expedition had a number of significant scientific and geographical objectives, but these groundbreaking studies would ultimately be eclipsed by the team's attempt to be the first to reach the South Pole. After months of preparation that included laying food and storage depots, Scott led a team of 5 men to reach the pole on foot. They arrived at 90 degrees south on the 17th of January 1912, only to find they'd been beaten to it by the Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen. Scott's party turned for home, struggling through some of the most extreme weather conditions ever recorded in the region. Their supplies soon ran out completely, and they perished, exhausted and probably hypothermic, in their tent.
It was actually 1,800, not 18,000 miles still. Now, there is actual science going on during this expedition, and that's where WGBH science editor Heather Goldstone comes in. Welcome.
Good to be here.
So both these expeditions, the first one and the second one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was one of the things that really distinguished the Scott expedition from some of the other polar expeditions. You know, they left in 1910. They didn't actually reach the pole until 1912. They spent a whole year doing scientific studies. They went and collected penguin eggs for evolutionary biology research. They were making measurements of magnetism to try to understand the magnetic field of the planet, which we didn't really understand that well at that point. So, yeah, they spent a whole year in the original expedition.
So how far have these guys gotten so far? They're on day 28.
They are on day 28 of what's expected to be about 110 days, about a 4-month expedition. As you said, they've got 1,800 miles round trip, and I think according to their blog at this point, they've still got over 1,600 miles of that to go.
So the red line shows where they are.
Yeah, the red line,
they
landed
make it between about 9 and 14 miles a day?
Yeah, well, it depends. They got kind of a rough start, and they actually hit some really rough weather. They spent a couple days holed up in their tent, not going anywhere, and then they've been working hard over the past several days to make that up. And from their blogs anyway, seem to be feeling a little bit better emotionally. But you got a sense from the blog, I mean, really early on, just how difficult this could be. 45
degrees below zero. So one of the cool things is they actually they found Scott's hut or tent or whatever you want to describe it. And
yeah, well, and you can actually see
frozen in time.
Yeah, literally frozen in time. You can actually, on Google Culture, like on Google Earth, you can actually go and take a virtual tour of the original hut that Scott erected. I mean, this is kind of a landmark that Antarctic researchers and other explorers often kind of go and visit in homage to Scott. And it was one of the things that Saunders said was kind of a highlight for him of the beginning of the expedition, that this is, you know, Scott's a childhood hero, essentially, for him. So to go and see that hut was really a moment for him.
And so if you're following along on the blog, they also talk about one day they were in this utter whiteout, and it was a whiteout, but it was also kind of a blackout at the same time, because there's no horizon, no sunlight, nothing.
Yeah, there's really almost no way to navigate. And in fact, researchers now, when they go down to McMurdo Station in Antarctica, part of their orientation is they put a white bucket over their head and make them try to find landmarks or other people to give them a sense of what it would be like to navigate in a whiteout like that.
I mean, I keep asking why. I mean, I know they do want to collect some scientific data, but they are also health nuts and sort of challenge experts.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a large part of this is, to quote mountaineer George Mallory, because it's there, because it hasn't been done, to go to the South Pole and back unsupported. So that's what Saunders and Tarka L'Herpiniere are doing right now. It's unsupported. It's just the two of them and what they can pull on their sleds, which started off at a pretty astounding almost 440 pounds.
Now, Scott brought Amundsen brought sled dogs with him, and he got there a lot faster because he had the dogs.
Scott had a combination. I mean, they had horses, they had dogs. They actually tried using motorized sledges, which were pretty much an unmitigated disaster. They didn't help, and they were very heavy. One of them actually fell through the ice. So they tried other things, but yeah, their final attempt at the pole was on foot.
What do they hope to bring home in terms of discovery, scientific discovery?
Well, one of the major things that they're doing is that they are recording as they go every day. They have these little handheld weather stations, essentially, and they're recording meteorological data, the same data that Scott recorded every day when they were there. And their science coordinator has been working hard, has actually created a website where you can go and help enter the data from the original logs into a database so that they can make those two data sets available to the scientific community, not really knowing what we would learn from those two sets of data, but that they're an interesting data set that someone might be interested in. There was a lot of other science, and I think this is some of the greatest part of the story, is the science that they're not doing, that was proposed to them, and they weren't able to do for a number of reasons. My absolute favorite was an idea that their science coordinator almost didn't propose to them because it seemed rather crazy. A prominent scientist came to them and said, we'd like to do some seismic measurements to figure out what's under the ice and deeper the geology of Antarctica. To do that, could we airdrop explosives, have them go and find them, detonate the explosives, and then make the seismic measurements? And they said, you know, there are a number of reasons. Mostly safety. We certainly don't want to blow up the sleds. We don't want anybody to get hurt. And we also don't want to, if we were to miss a depot, to leave undetonated explosives in Antarctica.
It's really a cool story. Heather Goldstone, thanks. And by the way, all of this is going to be posted on our website. So if anybody wants to follow along and track the expedition, you can do that online.